You get it.
Great.
Or a Cracker Barrel.
Okay.
The cafeteria folks. And just do retro everybody.
All right. I think we're ready.
Yeah, Monday.
I call this meeting of the Monomoy Regional School Committee to order at 6:37. The first item of business is the approval of the meeting minutes. Are there any corrections?
I move to approve the minutes from March 28th. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, if there's anyone that would like to speak publicly, now or never. All right, then that session, part of the agenda is closed. And recognitions. Dr. Carpenter?
Just really quick, I just wanted to acknowledge something that, I know Mary will talk about, but I think this is, we can have the superintendent's report on dueling Peter Pans. So, right now we have the middle school doing Peter Pan Junior production, and I had the pleasure of going to a fabulous production of Peter Pan at Harwich Elementary School. And I think that, I just really want to thank the faculty that were involved in both of those and all of the family and community members that helped make both productions possible.
Okay, thank you. Reports and discussions, Walk for Water fundraiser. We heard about that last week. Is there anyone else to talk about that? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the Walk for Water.
And just a point of clarification on this, ideally, we need to both approve it, and I guess what I would ask is that we approve a student activity account to put the money in, given that they'd be fundraising, it needs to have since the students are fundraising, we need to have an account to put the money in, given the magnitude of money that they anticipate bringing in.
I'll move to approve the Walk for Water fundraiser, as well as creating the Walk for Water student activities account.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Report on the elementary drama production of Peter Pan.
Hello, Mary Oldak, Principal of Harwich Elementary. We're here tonight to ask for the approval of the revolving account for the Harwich Elementary Drama Club. I have some slides showing here of the production that was put on this winter, Peter Pan, as the middle school is also doing Peter Pan right now. These are just some slides to show you the involvement of the students through the creation of the set and the production. This is a new venture for Harwich Elementary. We were presented with a proposal from Rebecca Riley, one of our first grade teachers, who's an amateur actress in the community. And we were able to do this on a shoestring because Rebecca had access to the costumes and the script and had actually adapted it and written some of the songs herself. And we had over 100 children sign up for what was originally supposed to be a cast of 20-some. And so she was able to double the cast. And we originally had put it out for kindergarten through fourth grade and had to limit it to second through fourth grade. And so we ended up with a cast of just under about 50 children in stage crew.
Wow.
And we didn't charge any club fee for this. And we were really able to do it with no budget because of the unique situation we were in terms of Rebecca's access to the costumes and script. So what I talked with Katie about how do we fund this going forward, and the suggestion was that we create this revolving fund, and then the question was, how do we fund the revolving fund? So at both of the performances, we had a donation bucket and raised right around $1,200. We had two very large contributions come in from members of the community, and then families were just putting what they could into the bucket after the performances. And so we're hoping to use this money to fund future productions. And I'd like to thank the MREA for helping us with the MOU to create these positions that weren't in the contract so that our kids could have this experience of broadening their experiences at school into the performing arts.
Thank you, Mary. Questions, comments? Sharon?
I don't have any questions, but I did see that performance, and it was amazing for an elementary school to do something of this quality. I was very impressed with the kids and the staff that put it on. It was just great. When that woman that you just mentioned, Miss Riley, came up at the end, she was just like every person I've ever seen come up for professional plays. It was just fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have an incredibly talented staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
And I just wanted to add to Mary's request in terms of the revolving drama account. We have a revolving drama accounts for the middle school and for the high school, but we haven't had the need in the past to have one for the elementary. So that is the request, either for tonight or going forward. It's just expanding, and I just thought we would do elementary so that when the opportunity presented itself in Chatham, we would just go ahead and have that creation. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, moving on, Roger Williams Zoo trip.
Hi, I'm Sandy Hansen. I teach first grade at Chatham Elementary School, and this is my 31st year teaching. My first graders are watching this meeting, so hi, boys and girls. Okay, I'm here to ask your approval to allow the first grade classes at Chatham Elementary School to go out of the state of Massachusetts to visit the Roger Williams Zoo in Providence, Rhode Island. We will ride in a coach bus with a bathroom for an hour and 45 minutes each way. Parent chaperones will ride the bus with the teachers, staff, and the students. We will be leaving the school at 7:45 a.m. and returning at 2:45 p.m. The purpose of this trip is to choose an animal from the Roger Williams Zoo to research and study for our end of the year capstone project. This project is a culmination of our year-long pathway study, is cross-curricular, and covers the Massachusetts Common Core state standards and science and technology engineering standards. The first grade classes visit the zoo, observe their animal to make the learning real and come to life. By drawing and observing their animal, the students collect evidence in their field journals for their research project. During the past 3 years, we have purchased a comprehensive library of books based on the animals at the Roger Williams Zoo. The students not only learn about their animal, but also learn the process of how to research, using a study guide, taking field notes, and observing their animal. The UBD Understanding by Design interdisciplinary unit that we've written also includes the first grade ELA standards of closer reading and informational text features such as diagrams, captions, labeling, bibliography, headings, table of contents, index, and glossary. After learning the informational text features, the students use a study guide called How to Study an Animal to guide their research. By the end of this unit, the students have produced a comprehensive research project that includes these text features. This project is accessible to all levels using differentiation and scaffolding so all students can produce a quality project. But most importantly, the students are able to explain how they conducted this research, from learning about the text features to following a study guide and taking notes. Then the students write a rough draft using the editing skills they have learned throughout the year and are able to produce a finished final copy. In the Massachusetts Science and Technology Engineering Standards, it states, all students, regardless of their future education plan and career path, must have an engaging, relevant, rigorous, and coherent science, technology, engineering education to be prepared for citizenship, continuing education, and careers. This field trip focuses mainly on the engagement piece. Engagement that is defined in the Massachusetts Science, Technology, Engineering Standards is Students need regular opportunities to experience the dynamic, interdisciplinary nature of science and instruction that should instill wonder in students about the world around them through engaging and exciting learning experiences. These goals can only be achieved through a rich and varied science, technology, engineering curriculum that includes thoughtful, hands-on, and minds-on activities, laboratories, and investigations. Students take ownership and responsibility in their learning when they have a role in making decisions and reflecting on their learning. Active engagement in learning promotes a growth mindset that allows students to feel they can access content and develop skills and thus succeed in science, technology, and engineering. Instruction designed for student engagement is key to achieving this. Usually, teachers have student representatives attend the school committee meeting to speak on behalf of their grade level, but I feel that first grade is too young to do this. So they wanted to tell you what they thought, so I made a little video, and so they can tell you themselves. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Are there any questions?
I'm gonna watch a video.
Jeez, Donna. We can hear it.
Oh, I love this song.
My animal is a military bird. I want to find out how long it can get. I also want to know how they can survive. My animal is a red panda. I want to find out where it lives and how big it gets. My animal is a red panda. I want to find out where they live and how they take care of their cubs. My animal is a giraffe. I want to find out why giraffes have little horns on their head. I also want to know why they have spots. My animal is a cheetah. I want to find out how fast they can run. I also want to know why they have spots. My animal is a harbor seal. I want to find out how long they live and how much they weigh. My animal is a sloth. I want to find out why sloths hang on trees. I also want to know why sloths have sat in the rainforest. My animal is a flamingo. I wanted to find out why they are pink, and I want to find out what they eat. My animal is a snowman. I want to know why they have a poofy tail. I also want to know how fast they can run. I want to learn about the Komodo dragon. My animal is a porcupine. I want to find out how many quills it has and how big it gets.
And as the years go by, a friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me.
Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I just have to comment that that seems like it's not first grade work.
Yes.
Just between their drawings and their speaking and their reading and just the presentation of what they're gonna come up with, it seems like it's well beyond first grade. That's very impressive.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I had almost the exact project in the 8th grade. I think I got a C.
I have to agree, having been a first grade teacher in Chatham, things have changed a lot, and it's exciting.
It's very, very exciting. Okay, so,
Thank you.
yep, very impressive.
Okay, the high school program of studies.
Good evening, everyone. Bill Burkett, Principal, Monomoy High School. Typically, when I come up, I always like to share a brief update of what's happening in the school, if I could. So as a former football coach, I would often break down film, which means you watch the same play, rewind it, and back then it was the 16-millimeter tape, and you rewind it, 2 in the morning, the head coach of Springfield College at the time, would want every play and every player diagrammed. And so you would watch that film to know everything about the other team and find out what their great players do well to learn from them. So over the weekend, in anticipation of this meeting, I watched the reruns of some school committee meetings, and our own student, Carolyn Davick, presenting all the great things that Monomoy does, because she's an exemplar on how to do that. So I want to give her a shout out tonight, and without stepping on her toes, I want to share just kind of what a typical week is like in Monomoy, or this week. We've got state mandated testing this week, but that's not all we have going on, and I just want to give a shout out to some of the great things happening, if I could. For example, today, these are all mostly teacher-led and student-led activities. We had a wellness fair in our gym, in which over 20 community members came in. Our wellness department organized it, collaborated with the community. They came in. Our students actually also held informational tables. We had fitness information. We had social emotional learning information, a bunch of activities. Harwich Police were there. So just a wonderful opportunity. All of our kids cycled through that, and it was just, excellent. So I want to thank our wellness department for organizing that, and our community members who participated. It was really a fantastic opportunity for our kids. Tomorrow, I'm giving you all an open invitation if you're available. I think at around 9 a.m. We're in collaboration with the JFK Museum of Hyannis. One of our great teachers, David Alexander, who oversees our internship program, has collaborated with them to host the Cape-wide Ambassadorship Day. It's their 5th annual. We'll be hosting it this year, so I want to thank Dave and his efforts. There'll be a lot of other students from other districts coming in, our own students participating in that, and there'll be some focus group conversations. There'll be some local congressmen or senators invited as well. So the topic is immigration, so I think it's very appropriate. Our kids will have student voice and a good opportunity for that, so I welcome you to all join that, but I think that's an impressive opportunity for our students, again, hosting something here done by our teachers. So I want to thank Mr. Alexander and the JFK Museum for allowing us that opportunity. Tomorrow, the Mass School Association of Administrators, which is kind of the main association for principals, assistant principals. I'll be hosting a meeting here. They've requested to have one of the quarterly meetings at our school for our high school committee to review and live our JOSM experience. So they've heard great things about it. They want to come and see it. So some principals from around the state will be coming in tomorrow. I'll be giving them a presentation on JOSM, and then they'll be going into classrooms and experiencing that. So that's quite an honor to have that happen for us. And 2 more things. I think one of my sayings I like to use is that we're a small school that thinks big, and this is a thank you to all of you for affording our kids this opportunity, is the amount of class trips we have. And tonight and tomorrow, we've got 2 trips going out. Most schools, twice the size of us, have maybe 1 a year. We've got 2 just this April vacation. We've got one going to Iceland and one going to China. So once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to talk about immersion like we have talked about in the past. Our kids are actually doing that. Our teachers and our students are very excited and really passionate about it. So that kind of backs up our previous trips already this year to Spain and Tanzania. So 4 major trips, and I know we've got plans for more in the future. So I want to wish them well and hope they enjoy that experience, and I know they will. Finally, it's National Assistant Principals Week, so I want to congratulate and thank all the very hardworking and dedicated assistant principals. Sometimes it's a thankless job. It was one of my favorite jobs. I've loved all my jobs, but that one's really rewarding. And we've got two great ones here. We've got great ones in the district, but Jen Police and Janie Girolamo, have been fantastic. I'm very blessed to have them. And so I've rewarded Jen, at least tonight, by putting in a 60-hour week and staying late to help present tonight. So that's kind of, thanks. So that's kind of the cool week in a nutshell for us here, just another week. And as far as the program of studies goes, we're in a real good place. I want to give you a little bit of a history with it. When we merged both schools, these presentations were a lot longer. The work was very challenging. We had to bring two programs of studies from two separate high schools into one. And what happened as an outcome of that, and justifiably so, is that we had a very large offering. Probably too many offerings, but we had to live it to see which courses the kids would take, which would be appropriate. And after a couple of years of doing that, we go through the process of reviewing our program of studies each year. And I think on year 5 now, we're in a real good place with offering very solid courses aligned with the state frameworks, but also offering a variety of elective opportunities that kids enjoy. And a sample of the process we use is the teachers will meet and they will look by department and they will look at the courses they offer, and they'll look at how many kids took those courses, how many sections we ran. So we look at the data on, is it a mandated graduation requirement first? Then we back it out, we look at our electives, and we say, okay, is this popular for the kids? Is this something the kids are choosing to want to be? Because it's all about opportunities here. So that's gone through several revisions till we got it to a place where pretty much only electives running are the popular ones that kids want to take. But again, that's reviewed every year, and we make sure we're aligned with the state frameworks. We also, through student voice, make sure that we're listening to kids and offering great electives that stick with the times and are probably ahead of the curve in most cases. What I have printed out here is kind of a little bit what we share when we talk about our school improvement plan. It kind of overlaps a little bit, but it's a little bit about the program of studies and some of the things we've been doing with our curriculum this year. And I want to thank Mr. Mark Smith, who's here tonight. I know he's presenting. He's really been great with our departments and our teachers. And I also want to thank Jen in her role as AP/academic dean. She's really worked well with Mark and our department heads. I want to thank our department heads. Just amazing work that's happening this year as far as curriculum. And I'll share some highlights, and then between Jen and I, we can answer any of your questions. We sent you the program of studies ahead of time in case you had any questions on that, but there's no substantial changes to that. So the focus, as you can see up here, is really diving in. After 5 years now, it's a real good time to kind of reassess what we're teaching in the classrooms, making sure our curriculum is aligned with the state standards and that the pacing is consistent. For example, if you have one child in an Algebra 1 class with one teacher and another child in a different class with a different teacher, that experience should be the same. The pacing should be the same. Certainly different styles of teaching with the teachers, but that experience as a student should be the same for both. And that wasn't always happening. After 5 years, things start to fragment a little bit, so you have to keep that in check. And I think Mark has brought some, with the work of Jen, has brought some consistency to that process that's been welcomed, and the teachers are really working hard on it. So the second bullet talks a little bit about some of the program reviews we're doing. So programmatically, we've really taken a deep dive into our English language learner program. 2 years ago, we had 15 students. This year, we've had over 30. So it's doubled in just 2 years with one staff member. I want to thank Scott in the budget process and all of you for approving a second EL teacher, which it's after doing our program review, we came up with that not just the kids. What we found is that there's 2 pathways that we're finding for students that move in from other countries. One is a language barrier, and those students may have a language barrier, but they've had the education that's appropriate to their grade level, so that can be overcome. The second pathway we're seeing is the students that fall in the category called SLIFE, S-L-I-F-E, that I have up there, students with limited or interrupted formal education. So that might be a student that not only has a language barrier, but also has maybe missed 2, 3, 4, up to 5 years of schooling. It might be at a 3rd or 4th grade level, depending on what country they came from or where they came from. So we're working with that. So we had one pathway where all those kids were together. You could have a kid with a 4th grade math level in an Algebra 1 class. Doesn't make sense for anybody. So we had to make sure that we had a separate pathway for those students that they could get that support at the level they are at to bring them up and not put them in a place that's over their head, but we needed the staffing to do that. So that's what that second EL staff member was, that will focus on math. The academic center was, a godsend to us in year 2 of our school. That was for students that were struggling, were assigned into that academic center, and it's been really productive. Probably a little too successful because we've kind of leaned on it. In fact, it's kind of a catch-all now. When our graduation rates skyrocketed, a lot of that could be thanked for the academic center because we were putting kids in there that were falling through the cracks and they were getting the support they needed. The problem with that is that our real focus initially on that program was grade 8 and 9. Get those kids caught up in the 8th grade, catch them early, get them caught up by 9th grade so they're on track. So when they do take the MCAS in 10th grade, they're ready to go. We're going to, after looking at that program, we found that we have to refocus that, and we've kind of broken that up on 2 tracks. One's going to be an English track, so we get the students that aren't doing well in their English classes to focus on the 8th and 9th grade students in English. And the second one is a Math Foundations course. Similarly, in the Math Foundations course, we were kind of putting kids from grades 8 through 12 in there that needed math support. And it was kind of a smaller class size. If you were having trouble in Algebra 1, you would have that additional math class to kind of help you with the work in that Algebra 1. Problem is, we had students from a wide range of knowledge in that class from grades 8 through 12. And that becomes a problem for differentiation for the teacher. So we're going to narrow that focus back to grade 8 and 9, where we originally started it. So that was part of what we found in our programmatic review. And we're excited about that, and I think the results will be excellent. And the last one is ELA text inventory, which is basically the books our kids are reading. And Jen can get into this a little more detail. This was pretty fascinating for us. I think we sensed it, but looking into the books we're using in our curriculum in English classes and what we found out versus race, gender, disabilities, that type of stuff, is we're pretty static in one genre, and we're not spreading that out enough. So we're going to look at trying to move to infuse more cultural diversity into that. And I think that'll be a great improvement for our English courses and for our kids, because I think we all would agree that if you're not interested in the book you're reading or the topic, just like anything else, you're not going to really buy into it. So I think that was a great step in the right direction to start our English work, which will carry into next year. So some of the outcomes from that work, so we're not just waiting for next year. A lot of stuff that we've done this year is that our algebra, geometry, algebra 2 courses are all aligned to the new standards and implemented this year. They all have what we call common assessments, back to that analogy of algebra 1, so that the teachers are giving the same assessment, so that the teachers can then work together collaboratively in their PLC time to look at that assessment results and help that improve or direct their instruction. And then the next one is our civics, world history, US 1 and 2, scope and sequence. Again, the new standards are coming out in social studies, and so that's reflective of that. We were ahead of the curve last year by starting an 8th grade civics curriculum, which is going wonderfully. But the work's been great. Again, I think I'm stealing a little bit of Mark's thunder here, but I want to credit the department heads, the teachers, and him and Jen for doing a lot of this work. It's been excellent. And then the development of the additional pathway, I talked about that already. The foundations in the academic center, I addressed that as well. So those are some of the highlights that are already being implemented this year, and I think next year we look forward to just keeping the ball rolling. I'll turn it over now. I'm going to invite Jen up to take phase 2 of this, and I'll be here with you if you have any questions. Thank you.
Hello. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that may have come up. I think we sent the draft for the program of studies about a week ago, and if you've had a chance to go through those, if you have any questions that might be specific to courses that are in there. Again, there aren't any changes from last year, but if you do have questions about any courses that are running, particular sections, I'm happy to answer that for you.
I don't have a question regarding the courses, but could you elaborate on incomplete grades?
So a student is entitled an incomplete grade if for some reason, if it was medical, if they were out for an extended period of time towards the end of a term. And they're entitled it for 5, 10, 15 days, depending on the length of their absence.
So they wouldn't ultimately do the credit or the
Correct.
work. Okay.
Correct. So they satisfy the grade, and then we post it later.
Thank you.
Yep, just like college, very similar.
Joe?
Good to meet you again.
Hi.
I have some questions that are more for internal discussion in the school rather than for you to answer
Okay.
right now. So there are things where I wouldn't really expect you to have an answer. But the AP courses are described differently in relation to the AP exam. In fact, there's three different things said. Some AP courses make no reference to the AP exam. English says students enrolled in AP English Literature and Composition will be expected to take the exam in May. And most of the courses say students who take this course and do well, etc., will be prepared for the exam. You note the difference.
We do expect that students that are enrolled in our AP courses do sit for the exams. And I don't know if you want to, Bill, if you want to talk a little bit about this, but we've gone back and forth about this a little bit. And some schools, and I don't want to say that they game the system, but what they do is they enroll their students in AP courses, and then they decide at the end of the year who is going to take the test, and therefore potentially their data looks better. We recommend that if our students are sitting in an AP class, the goal is to try to get credit for it when you move on to college. So we do suggest that all of our students take the AP exam. We absolutely push towards that. We're not hiding anything.
So we can move towards more uniform language consistent
Absolutely.
with
Yeah.
what English has? Because that seems like a reasonable position, by the way, an honest and fair one that is actually, that is with integrity, as I would expect from the high school.
Absolutely.
But so far, really only English actually says that as fully as,
That's a good
as,
point.
as
Thank you.
could be. And can I nitpick a little? Do I have time for that? Can I do that, Donna?
I don't think so, Joe.
Okay.
You're welcome to come in and we can sit down and
There-
go through it, fine tooth
I
comb.
think he's going to anyway.
If I'm,
Do it right now.
As he should.
Make sure you're taking notes, Bill.
I had to read carefully the English one, being an English teacher. I do have some points in that. I won't, I'm suffering from the lashes of the tongue of my Chatham colleague, Ms. Scott. So to whom could I write about a few points here?
You can send it to me.
All right, so
Absolutely.
if that would be okay, I'll write a few things that I
would
think could be
welcome
more clear. I'm only now beginning to question the integrity, because I'm not sure anyone would welcome that kind of an email, but it's awfully generous and kind of you if that in fact is the case. Thank you so much.
We need to make sure that Joe has Panera before.
Make sure she's eating. Okay. Terry?
Jen, I only asked this so Joe can have a retort.
Fair enough.
Jen, congratulations, you're one of the two assistant principals, and then you have a role as an academic administrator. Would you summarize in like a minute and a half to us, what does that
So essentially, I oversee curriculum, instruction, the development of the program of studies, development of the master schedule. I work with Mark Smith. Janie Girolamo, the other assistant principal, oversees discipline. So we split the two roles.
Oh, good, hey, that's terrific, yeah.
There it is.
So you won the long straw. Very good.
Short straw, long straw.
Sharon?
So along the prelude that Joe gave about, I don't need this information right now. Usually if I have a question about anything specific, I will send it in for an administrator to look it up. But I'm very excited about the practical money skills for life. And I would like to know at some point how many kids, I see here that it's grades 11 and 12 elective, take that, because I do think that's a need for everybody, so I'm just.
So we run one section of practical money skills, which essentially is run in the fall, and it coincides with the senior internship, which is in the spring semester.
Okay.
So what we try to do, if it fits into the student schedule, and that's not always possible, as we've discussed in the past, students that are planning to take an internship in the spring, that's their pre-internship financial literacy course. So we run one of those, but we also run 2 full-year sections of personal finance, which is in the business math department. So essentially, there's 3 sections. One is full year, practical money skills is a semester course.
Okay, I didn't understand that. Thanks for that
You're welcome.
explanation.
I actually have a couple of comments. One of them is I've run into a few parents whose children at the high school age that are not at Monomoy, and one of their comments, or their comment throughout from many of the parents, was actually, my kid doesn't have that many options to choose from. That basically their high school courses are decided for them. You can choose a language, and they can choose maybe an elective every other year. There's not that many options. So it's a kudos to our high school and the guidance and the department chairs for coming up with all of these options for the kids, which is a segue into my second comment, which goes to watching my daughter try to select her courses
Isn't that fun?
for next year, and she's trying to decide which one. She has so many options that she's like, well, what if I take this year and I'll wait and take that one next year, but what if they don't offer that? And so just the number of options that the kids have are just incredible. Between the 4 different languages, or, she's a Latin kid, but the range of languages, she has friends that are switching languages. They've taken the language for 2 years, and they're like, oh, let's try another one.
Because you can.
Because you can, and why not? Because you're in high school, and you don't need to make those decisions yet. And just the sampling between the art classes and the culinary classes and the electives from each department, so she can look and say, I really like English, and so I'm going to look at my English electives, but wait, this history elective looks really cool too. So it's just really amazing what we can do at our school. So just a kudos to
I
everyone
appreciate
putting
the
it together.
comment, because we've worked really hard to get to the point where we aren't prescriptive, and I know we've had a lot of conversations about that, and I think that by being flexible and opening up some of those opportunities for students, they can pursue a pathway, which if you are restrictive, that's going to prevent that. So thank you for the comment.
Hello.
Tina, hello.
Just for clarification, I mean, this particular class, I guess, has been certainly talked about and debated for the last couple of years, but just for clarification, in the 8th grade, U.S. Government and Civic Life. So it's my understanding that, with the civics, so that's been moved into the 8th grade course, is that correct?
Yep, so those standards started this year, and we were ahead of it. We started it last year, anticipating that was going to be the change from the state. So that was the shift. So we pushed it into grade 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you offered it though last year though, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is actually year 2. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay,
Thank you, John.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Yours going to be as fun? Is yours going to be as fun?
Song and dancing. Mark Smith, Director of Curriculum. So I have the agenda item just to give an update on where we are with all things curriculum. So as I sort of mentioned a couple of different times that I spoke to the group, one of my main focus is now that we're year 6, 7, depending upon how you look at things, is really trying to define curriculum-wise what is Monomoy moving forward. And when we brought Chatham and Harvard together, there was a lot of work that had to get done just to make something, to sort of, and I sort of use the analogy of kind of really hard and fast, really kind of smashing 2 existing curriculums together and sort of seeing what sort of came out the other side. And there's a lot of other change and a lot of other processes going on within the district as the district was being formed and maturing. So going forward, my big sort of visionary piece is trying to get a consistent and common map for us as a district going forward and really working towards a consistent base. So I've showed you the graphic here on the right before, which summarizes sort of how I spent the initial part of my first 2 or 3 months onboarding myself, getting familiar with everybody, collecting as much information as I could, and started to really collect as part of that message that it was time for us to really start to make sure that we were all moving in the same direction, whatever analogy you want. We're all pulling our oars in the same direction. We all have our hands in the boat pushing the same, but those are all ship analogies. But anyways, we're all going in the same direction. And so we've started to do some things, some of the things that I just sort of initially thought that I could just sort of take on and do myself as a singular person. So I reshaped one of our templates that we were using, just put it into a different format so that it ultimately would fit within this Google-based organization system, which I've already talked a little bit about. And I've really focused on trying to develop a process-oriented approach to curriculum. And then I also prioritize short and long-term goals. And I haven't talked about in this group, but I know I've talked about in several different people. The biggest shift for me from going from being a building principal to a central office role is being afforded the luxury of long-term planning. Like as a principal, you're like, oh yeah, I really want to get to that in 3 years. And then you just are spending the rest of your day putting out fires. And you're constantly just dealing with almost everything that's right in front of you all the time. But in this role, you actually do get some time to think about where are things gonna go and what are the steps, and it's sort of thinking about some of the larger cogs and how they all fit together. So I've been able to really sort of prioritize some long and short-term goals. So I sort of framed the presentation on thinking about what are we doing right now, and then what do we have planned in the near future, next year to 18 months out. So where are we right now? Bill already talked a little bit about the first line there. So I've been working with the history department over the course of the year. Jen mentioned the standards for history and social sciences were in the adoption phase, and then they were finally fully authorized sometime this fall. So we had a good sense of where they were going to be going. So as she mentioned, some big shifts were already made where the civics was put into 8th grade, because that was a pretty clear message we were getting from the state that was going to be sort of an anchor piece. We didn't know the finalized versions of what the standards were going to look like. So once we had that, there was a presentation from the department, and so I've been working with the high school department. They've been working it through their PLC to get the folks together, like the teachers that are teaching world language, the teachers that are teaching US 1, US 2, they're starting to get together, and they have been actually been working really hard to develop a scope and sequence for those courses. We had to make some decisions. The frameworks are laid out with a 4-year sort of this idea that you'd have a 4-year graduation requirement, where we have a 3-year graduation requirement, and they don't give you a lot of guidance on how you should condense. So it's a blessing, and then it gives you some freedom. And it's a challenge departmentally, because we, as a department, had to prioritize what were we going to do and how are we going to do it. So there's a lot of good conversation, and sort of took a little while to get some real good traction, and now they're really moving forward. So it has some it's a history department. You can imagine the debate. So there's some really good debate, and then we've got some really good forward motion. And once that was in place, then I've been working separately with a K-7 team to develop scope and sequence for K through 7. Because everything some things are similar, but a lot of things are pretty different. So we really needed to take a good look and a good dive into the standards. And the focus, my first primary focus was to get scope and sequence documents, which a scope says, what are we going to teach? What are the big ideas? What are the, what are the standards asking us to cover? And then the sequence is in which way, in which order are we gonna cover them? What is the best way to present things to develop ideas for students? That's where the scope and the sequence part comes in. And there's a document process for that. And that idea is so that, like Bill mentioned, so that if you're in an Algebra 1 class, or in this case, you're in a US 1 class, that while the two teachers may be different in their style and their delivery, that the kids are approaching similar units, with the same units, in the same progression. One teacher's not deciding to spend 3 weeks on World War I, and another teacher's deciding that I'm only going to cover it in 2 days. That there's some expectation. You have some room for flexibility because you want to respond to the students in front of you, but we've established together about what the units are going to be, about how long we're going to spend on them, et cetera. Bill also talked about the 8 through 12 text analysis and text inventory. That was a project that came to us from the state, a pilot program that they're looking at. And like Bill mentioned, it takes all of our shared texts that we use. So like, in English 10, in freshman English, what are the texts that are being used across all those? And then we're looking at those texts across a bunch of different lenses. So like mostly around the main characters and the authors. What is the ethnicity of the author? What's the ethnicity of the main character? What's the gender of the main author? What's the gender of the main characters? And really starting to look, and we kind of had a sense, and the data bore out. We have a very mono-ethnic, mono-gender, mono-perspective curriculum resources. And so I've been working with Bill and Jen on a plan for adjusting that going forward. And it ties in, and we're going to be doing the last column is we're doing a similar process through with our K-5 ELA program that I've sent out requests for participation for a task force to participate in that. So we'll start that work to sort of get into that work this spring into the summer, and that's like an 18-month project that I have planned to do with that group across both elementaries. And it was already in the works, so I don't want it to sound like I'm responding, but during the conversation about Spanish versus science, there was a lot of concern brought up around losing sort of a multicultural experience for kids, that it wasn't necessarily always about the language, it was also about kids getting diverse perspective. And that is one of the lenses that we already had this ball in motion, but it's something definitely we're considering is how do we make sure that our English curriculum, ELA curriculum, is providing kids with the phrase that's used commonly is mirrors and windows, so that the kids, as far as a mirror, that the kids of our diverse student population can see themselves reflected in the curriculum, and it offers kids windows into other cultures. So we want to make sure that the reading material, what we're writing about, et cetera, are afford for those two opportunities.
Can I ask a quick?
Yeah.
Is 6th and 7th grade just kind of merged into one or the other group, or is it?
6th and 7th grade is already sort of along the path in that.
Thank you.
So it's just not a priority area for concern right now.
I want to make sure they weren't like neglected.
No, yeah, don't care too much about that.
Yeah,
just kidding.
We're just middle school.
Yeah, they're already sort of they're a little further along the path.
Thank you.
Let's see, what else? So as far as professional development goes, I've been working with the professional development committee. We just put out a survey to the entire staff to collect data for planning for next year and beyond. It actually went out to all roles across the district. So custodians, cafeteria workers, we had it tiered. If you clicked that I'm a cafeteria worker, it brought you to a different set of questions than if you clicked I'm a teacher. I don't necessarily, supervise the professional development for the custodians. However, the information that I get from the survey is information that I can give to Rick Travers as he plans for training for the custodians. So we've really set a wide swath to collect as much information as we could. And so I'll meet with a committee after the vacation to digest that information and start to plan both short and long-term projects going forward. Bill talked about the EL program at the high school, in the work that we're doing to develop a SLIFE program there. And we're also in the early stages of tiered monitoring for our EL program, which is the old CPR. They just have a new fancy name for it. And then for math, K to 4, we've done some targeted professional development this year with some targeted professional development going forward, instructional rounds with the teachers, and then we also are piloting a data collection tool that allows us to be more responsive to individual kids' needs.
What are instructional rounds again?
So it's when the, so like if it could be any different combination of administrators, but so like I know like Scott and I are currently in a round where we'll go, who did we just go with recently with Karen Gilmat went through all the wellness department. So we observed it together collectively, so the three of us, and then we have a conversation around what it is we're observing, how we might recommend improvements, et cetera. So in mathematics, we've been doing those with the elementary principals. And so it's not just the principal by him or herself, it's with sort of a team of administrators.
And is that into classrooms, or
Yeah.
just?
Oh, yeah, that's, sorry, yes. So we're doing that, we are going out and observing classrooms and then having conversations about what we're observing and how we would move things going forward. We've done that focused around math on a couple different occasions.
Thank you.
Yep. So where to next? So that's sort of all the irons, well, some of the irons that are currently in the fire. And so one target area going forward is curriculum development for summer. So this is all summer work that I have planned. I just sent an email out to the district this afternoon, actually, posting for, sort of recruitment on looking for people to do this work over the summer. And we're making a slight adjustment to the process, and I'll get to this in a later slide, but one of the things I really want to do is tighten the process piece. And I feel like that's one of the things that my role can do is sort of a protocol and a structure support. I can't write all the curriculum, but I can support making sure that our curriculum has a consistent way that it's written, that it's done to completion, that it goes through a proper feedback process, that it's implemented. That's what my role can support. So these are the priority areas for our summer curriculum writing. You don't need to list or read them, but it's based upon either the work that I've been doing, or conversations that I've had with building principals, or conversations I've had with specific departments. And then there is it's sort of like an application process for people to apply to participate this summer. There is an option for them to, if there's something that hasn't been considered, for them to offer something that hasn't been considered. And then what we're gonna do is, part of participating is you have to be able to commit. There's a day, forget the exact date, it's somewhere shortly after we get out, where they have to be able to commit to come in and have like a 2-hour session with me where we go over exactly what it is that it's expected, and there's a check-in process, and then a feedback process for me, and then there's a process going forward for feedback from the larger group as well. Let's see, so I mentioned the K-5 ELA task force. So that team's gonna be it's gonna be across both elementaries and including the 5th grades. So across both elementaries and then up into the 5th grade. And we're gonna be looking at our current resources that we're using for reading. You may be aware that there are 2 main primary resources, one in each elementary school. There's a 3rd one at the middle school once they get to 5th grade. So we're going to be looking at those existing resources and evaluating them through an objective, research-based method. We're going to be with the goal of getting alignment across both elementary schools. And I've already told the teachers, like, this is the hill that I'm willing to die on. Like, we will get to this place where the 2 elementary schools have consistency across their curriculum. It's going to take some time, but if you go to 3rd grade at Monomoy, you go to 3rd grade at Monomoy. And each school can have its own flavor and its own, the schools are unique at places, but the curriculum needs to be the same. You know, I just think about the presentation earlier today,
I was
like,
just-
that was a great experience, and quite frankly, I listened to it, I'm like, that should be something that should be part of our curriculum for first grade, not first grade at Chatham Elementary. And I don't want to be to the exclusion of one, I want it to be to the inclusion of both. And then, so the group will go through, we'll be looking to make sure, because a lot of work's already been done. Sort of the piece that we're missing is this cohesive element that connects reading, writing, word study, whether it's theme, and that'll drive a scope and sequence, because that's a little loose currently. And then if needed, if that group decides a recommendation for a common resource, then it'll come out of that group and it'll come before you for us to have that conversation going forward. And then K-4 science, especially primed with the shift in the staffing positions, this is a prime time to have a conversation around how we're going to integrate that new position. That's going to be work we're going to do this summer. We're going to be looking at scoping and sequencing the K-4 science curriculum, and then looking at how we can integrate, because different people have presented. We've got great partners, right? We have Mass Audubon, Marconi, like you go on and on and on. What I really want to do is really crystallize, and I actually really want to get all the people together in the same room and see how they, as part of that integrated model, how they're going to best support the standards and support what we need to cover in a coherent way that enhances our program, doesn't replace our program. So like I've already said, like Audubon isn't going to come in and teach a class during that science block. Then we're not enhancing anything, we're replacing something. So we really need to have that conversation. And then we need to have a conversation about, which we've discussed, but it's work that needs to get done on what's going to get done in that science class, what's going to get done in the classroom, how does that all work and map together. All right, let's see, what else? Professional development, as I mentioned, we need to use the PD survey to plan going forward. I'm going to share all that data with all the different supervisors of different departments. We're going to continue the math and focus PD going forward. Next year, that's the math program. And we're going to, I think both elementary schools I know Mary presented about the guided reading library at HES. We're expanding the guided reading library at CES as well. And then with that comes what does guided reading really look like? What's the professional development for the teachers? And then for history, and actually all the other scope and sequence work that gets done, this is like the process piece. So I think I've mentioned before, what has happened in every district I've ever worked in is small groups of people will work on curriculum development, right? But if you weren't there to write that unit, you didn't write that scope and sequence, if it isn't clearly articulated to you, if you don't have an opportunity to provide some feedback on it, it just becomes another thing that goes on a shelf and you don't change what it is that you're doing. So I've developed a process for feedback utilizing the instructional leaders on where the scope and sequence or the unit, it will go back, there's a protocol for them to follow for everybody who's going to be responsible for teaching that to provide feedback. Then it goes back to the writer incorporates the feedback, and then it goes back as, okay, everybody's had a voice, the feedback's been incorporated, this is now what we're doing. And that will ultimately, that last part comes out of my office. And then again, same thing for our unit development. And that ties, you notice ties directly to strategic objective number 4. One of the things on that objective, I'm not going to remember the exact language, but it's about a consistency. It talks about consistency in the way we do certain things around our curriculum and our instruction across the district. And I'm not going to talk too much more about this because I've already sort of talked about it in different places, but I really want to cement a common practice across the district for both development, feedback, and then how we're going to use PLCs going forward to measure the impact of curriculum changes. So that's really then starting to have conversations around, okay, how is this affecting student learning? And then through the building-based leadership, I'll need the support of the principals, myself and the principals working together to understand, ensuring that, okay, now we've gone through, we've said this is going to be the scope and sequence. I've got a process for the principals to be easily access that information. Now we need to make sure it's actually going on inside the classrooms. And then using the Ed Council, continuing to grow them as leaders so they can help support the feedback process and lead that process. And sort of the big, for me, it's going to be about making sure we keep our eyes on the road and keep moving to getting to this place where we've got this common map and we've got this way, this Monomoy curriculum that is going forward. And it's the things that define us as a district, particularly. Questions?
Yes, Jackie?
Just curiosity, as far as the elementaries are concerned, how far, if you could measure it, or, I don't know, how far off are we as far as getting the curriculum streamlined, classroom section to classroom section by grade, grade level, and then within each school?
It's a good question. If I was to measure it in nanites, it would probably be 7 nanites.
First you have to define a nanite, please.
Or where do you find like the biggest?
Yeah, I'll joke aside. So it's not in, there are a lot of common the standards are, people are consistently hitting the standards. But it goes back to that other piece that I mentioned 1 or 2 presentations ago, is the common conversation about what are we going to prioritize, and ultimately when we get to the end of the year and we're out of days, what gets cut. That's where, we've got I'd say 80% of the scope is consistent, so people are covering about 80% of the same material. The sequences are all over the place. That part who does what when, is pretty inconsistent, consistently inconsistent. And then it's that last 20%, they're just really hard conversations, because that means somebody's got to give up something, or somebody like me has to come in and say, look, I understand, but we can't do it all. And some of it's permission based. As a principal, I used to say all the time, I feel like half my job is telling people it's okay. It's okay to do that. And so I think I have to come in and say, and I've had a couple different, Ed Council specifically has said, you just need to keep telling us that it's okay, that we're going to prioritize this, and that we're going to focus on that, and that we can't get to everything, and have a realistic conversation about the number of days that you actually have to instruct. You look at a high school schedule, right? It's a 5-drop-2 or 7-drop-2. So out of 7 days, there's 2 days they're not instructing. So don't build a 180-day curriculum, because you don't have the kids for 180 days. So you need to think about the number of minutes you have in a day, and then we need to build a curriculum that actually matches what we actually have for time in front of kids. So 7 nanites.
Perfect.
Terry?
Did Joe have?
No.
All set?
I do, but I'm waiting for you.
You're
Just going down the line.
I'm deferring at this time.
You better make this good.
He's got a lot of sketches and circles, and he's got his own diagrams over here.
Actually, this is a shopping list for, actually, thank you. A nice outline. Not so much how, 3 or 4 more years from now for this, but within that, you probably have a list of just another way of saying it. As we build this K-12, the sequencing, and I'd be interested to know how, within the subjects, just take English and math, would there be a consistent evaluation tool given to all the 3rd graders, or all the 7th graders, or all the 9th graders or the 8th graders in civics, within areas that there are more than one teacher teaching? So if you have a department where, and ours are probably 3 teachers, up here at the high school maybe 4 or 5, I don't know. I would like to think at some point, whether we call them, the kids, I can recall just a week or 2 ago said they had exams coming up. And I recognize I'm not really committed to every exact, but at some point staff creates their daily quizzes in their even major tests. But at some point I would imagine it would be good to measure either midterm form or at the end of a term within the subject area, a created consistent evaluation test.
Yeah, so a properly designed scope and sequence. So it's a little bit different at the elementaries, because the elementaries have a pretty good like screening process already. So we use the map, which you may or may not have heard us, we've showed the data before. And they use that at the middle as well, but that's math and ELA focused, or it's all it is. So when we get into the other areas, we need to have common assessment. So as we come to, and I think this is what you're talking, this is different language, I think, for the same thing that you're saying. When we set out a scope and sequence for whatever, US 1, that as part of that, we need to have, and I've told the department, 3 or 4 times a year, there needs to be an assessment that you're all giving that, and that's part of the design, the backwards design process, is if we're thinking about what it is, where it is we want kids to know, what it is we want kids to be able to do, that's step number 1. Then step number 2 is how are we gonna know they can do it? And then that doesn't have to be, every teacher given the same test on the same day the entire year, but there should be, to your point, a couple of times, 3 to 4 times a year, where we are giving the same assessment to kids, if they're taking the same course, even if it's multiple teachers, because it should be something that we developed as a department to say, this is how we'll know if the kids have learned what it is we want them to learn.
A comment and then a couple of follow-up thoughts. It is an exciting time because, for at least as I observe it, and from staff leadership, when you think that, as you said, 5 or 6 years ago, 2 curriculums from Chatham and Howard bumped into each other. And here we are 3, 5, 6 years later, we're getting to a point where we're going to begin to focus that. And what a great opportunity to be in that stage of creating something that, where we were able to glean out the great from the good. A couple of thoughts, and I'm sure, the other night I was watching, and I think it was the Celtics, it was a New England station. And up comes, and it could be another channel, up comes a DY STEMS ad. And up comes, at another time, Pat, the high school principal in Barnstable, featuring a 2-minute, come to us because we're tremendous. I'm not suggesting we sell the sizzle, but at some point, that marketing device, most especially for Charter Lighthouse, Charter Sturgis, if that caught the eye of a Howard or a Chatham kid, or 2 or 3, it certainly might be worth it. Now, I know Mr. Cass, I've heard just raised about him, maybe it's his area, in a year or 2 could develop a team of kids, and I know there's a course that kids take that could create that type of thing that would market our curriculum. And the other thought, and I've kicked it around for years and years, and someone here said that all staff aren't curriculum writers or developers, but at some point it might be, it may be by another term, I think we might have them, that at some point it might be good to surround you in your role with what I'd say curriculum master teachers, that with a stipend or some form would be the contact person at that level, high school, middle, and they're already here. I mean, the term is, and I've lost track of it. To me, that might be a good kind of a generation of a core team to follow through with some of these things.
Yeah, and I would say at the middle and high school level, the instructional leaders serve, I've leaned on them at least in that way, because they are content people, like, and we've had this conversation before, right? Elementary teachers, they cover everything. So I don't have necessarily a, 3rd grade science specialist, where I can go to the middle school and I know I can get a science instructional leader. At the high school, I've got a science instructional leader. So so I've definitely leaned on them for that, but you're right, they're not curriculum writers. It is sort of a different skill set, but they're definitely content leads that I can go to. And that's too, the part about curriculum, like that's why I want to have a process where people who are good at this work and want to earn some extra money in the summertime and the district's going to pay them to write curriculum is great, but I also then need to make sure that it gets through the larger feedback process and everybody, because I just know the way people, I've been in this game long enough to know if people don't have an opportunity at some point to have a voice into something, then they're less likely to then implement this new, whatever it is, unit, scope, and sequence.
My last thought, or is this the next to last thought?
No, I can't keep up anymore.
Next year, I think we're going to be evaluated. We've moved it a year in advance by the schools and colleges team that comes in. I would think as you glean out of this process and move it to, say, focusing on the high school and the curriculum development, I think it'd be a wise thing some evening, the first time this crew comes in for a meal or whatever. It might be wise for them for a half hour to see where we've come curriculum-wise. Thanks again. Very, very well done.
Joe?
My experience, and I can only speak in that because I'm going to make a generalization, and I don't know if it's true for anyone else. I'll just speak in my own, the years that I've been in the game. Really fine schools with really fine people go through, let's say, a NEASC process. They do the review, they get the recommendations, get the nice 3-ring binder, put it on a shelf somewhere in the guidance department or in the library. Really fine schools go through developing a strategic plan. I think it ends up right next to the NEASC recommendations. Am I correct in seeing here that there are specific, multiple references to the strategic plan?
Yeah. Trying to actually make my job a little simpler and connect things, yeah. I mean, you know, I mean,
Impressive.
yeah, we want the strategic plan to actually come to life. And we've actually, just as an aside, we've started, you know, when we meet as an administrative team, on our agenda, we have 2 different types of meetings. Once a month, it's a strategic meeting, focused on a strategic plan. So we've actually started putting this agenda item, which specific strategic objective is it connected to try to stay focused on the mission.
This is unusually good.
Oh, thanks.
That's what I'm trying to say for the administrative team. Unusually good. In fact, I had some worry all through the process that we did with this strategic plan of, okay, how 6 months from now, how are we going to come back to that and make sure that it's that we're still keeping our eye on the road. So truly, in all seriousness, this is beyond what some of the highly rated schools in Massachusetts do as a matter of routine. And further, that what you have in here is a kind of a mechanism to see that good work is being done and going forward, and it's being reported, and information isn't getting lost or just hidden away somewhere or forgotten, and that there's a circular process of knowledge being shared, which hopefully is more than a circle, becomes a spiral. And I'm so pleased and relieved to see this. And again, thank you to all the administrators who had a part in creating this curriculum update.
Very good.
I just have one comment. I wanted to highlight something you said on page 9 going forward, talking about K-4 science, with the integration, the whole Spanish STEM. And you said on here, and I loved what you said, what it says here is integration of outside experts, but what you said was enhance with outside experts. And I like that, and I really wanted to pull that out, because going through the budget process, I think there's sometimes a thought that, we could replace certain teachers or whatever with these outside experts. So I wanted to really highlight that it's enhancing with outside experts versus taking the place of. So I just wanted to pull that out just for people that might be thinking, why aren't we, why are we paying for this when we could maybe bring in all these outside experts? So I just wanted to pull that out.
We've got unbelievable resources locally for me, it's just about, okay, so the relationships have been established with all these different groups. Now and they all have amazing stuff to offer, and they all come from their place in the world, right? So they, whatever their specialty is. So Atlantic White Shark Conservancy is another group that we do work with, and obviously they're coming from a particular angle, but they can address a lot of our science topics just through one animal, and that's great. What I want to do is put everybody in the room and say, okay, so this is this is what once we have a clear and clean scope and sequence K to 4 and say, okay, is there something else, does this all fit where it is? Does this need to be in a different grade? Does this need to, is there something different that you offer that would be a better fit to really enhance and round out the entire K4 science program?
Exactly. And also what you said too with the science teacher, with the integration of new science special, because we've had lots of discussions about the elementary teachers not being specialists. So to me, this is a selling point. And I just wanted to pull out, again, because one of the things I had heard just out in the community was bringing in all these experts. Why do we need a science teacher? So I just wanted to bring out what you said, that it's enhancing with outside experts versus taking the place of.
Right.
So I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, like a great example, so we were actually interviewing, we've been interviewing for that position, that science position, right? So one of the candidates has had a role at Mass Audubon in the past. And so she was talking about, I know I happen to observe at the high school, Mass Audubon comes in and does a turtle necropsy, with one of the marine, I think it's not marine biology, it's a marine something class course. And she was talking about how Audubon would love to do that work at the elementary level. And it's like, I think I can say with some pretty high level of confidence, most of our elementary teachers would not be comfortable running a necropsy in their classroom. However, if you could bring that in, themselves, they're not going to go get the turtle and do all the cutting and everything. But if you were to bring just think about that experience. But you can't replace everyday science. That's not going. That's one great thing that, if well connected to a larger set of objectives, is a great experience about adaptations or whatever ultimately it's going to be. So it's really about thinking about how do all those pieces come together instead of having a couple of cool things that happen that aren't interconnected and connected to what's going on back in the classroom.
Exactly. Thank you.
So just because we're back at the elementary school, I have a question about how you see the two schools fitting together. And is your vision to make sure that Chatham and Harwich Elementary Schools, when the children get out of 4th grade, have the same experiences, or is it at 2nd grade and 3rd grade and all that they match up?
Oh yeah, I understand the difference. Yeah, so it should be like, if you're a 2nd grader, and again, as much as I never want to get to, this sort of Stepford Wives type of an idea where it's like, just we've got a bunch of robots that are operating without thinking, and that don't have any personality. Like, I definitely want each teacher to be an individual. But as far as a 2nd grade, the major academic experiences should be the same, regardless of which classroom you're in the Monomoy Regional School District, because we are a school district. So you don't want to, be experiencing some great project that involves a trip to the Roger Williams Zoo and is this really in-depth study of an animal, and you don't do anything comparable at a different school or in a different classroom. I had a school when we first came together, my previous district, I had the problem that I had 10 kindergarten classrooms. So it was really about getting 10 kindergarten classrooms, even though they're in the same building, getting them all to do the same big things across the classrooms.
Right. I understand that. It's just a matter of philosophy which way it goes, but having had the experience of just having 2nd and 3rd grade years ago change in history, it was a major ordeal to get, I forget what it was, immigration or something.
It's probably the Pilgrims. Everybody wants to go to Plymouth Plantation.
Yes,
so
yes,
I
it did.
guarantee you
It did
Pilgrims.
have to do with the Pilgrims and Plymouth Plantation. So, I understand.
And, I said to a different department in a different conversation, I said, my first approach is to put the professionals together in the room and have them come to a common
Yes.
understanding. But ultimately, if they can't, then it isn't really a curriculum conversation anymore. It's really more of an HR question, and I'll have to come in and make a decision. And I have no problem being Solomon. I'll split.
Better you than me. All right, thank you.
And I just wanted to kind of echo what Joe was saying, in that I'm very impressed with the process of your processes. But that, with that said, on paper, this is it. But my question or concern might be is the process of getting it to all of the teachers and having them buy into it. And I guess that's just a step along the way you work with and see, and you try to get them involved and.
Yeah, and I mean, it's gonna be, essentially, philosophically, my approach to this is, we get the work done in small groups, then everybody gets a process or an opportunity to provide feedback to that. And I have a process for that to happen already, that I've already run through our ed council, and that our first iteration of going through that is gonna be with the scope and sequence documents, K to 7. See, with the high school department, they're already working together, so like all the people that have to teach it are already building it. The same with 6th and 7th grade social studies. My 2 6th grade social studies teachers, they are working. My 2 7th grade, so they're in agreement already. But when I had 1 3rd grade teacher doing it for the,
Yeah.
so that has to go back and go through all the 3rd grade teachers to get feedback, and then it'll go back and be developed. And then you've had your chance, everybody gave feedback, this is what we're doing going forward. And then it just sort of becomes a leadership question. And I'm not in the business to necessarily make friends.
My money's on you, I like it.
So excited.
Anybody else?
No.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving to the subcommittee reports. The first reading of the policy files.
Yes, actually, last time, we did cover this, but evidently it wasn't delineated on the
That's right.
agenda. So to go over this again, basically, the file IHB, Special Instruction Programs and Accommodations, Programs for Children with Disabilities. The black-lined things are being recommended to be dropped. All the red are being added. And this is really just kind of itemizing that this goes across the board, all of those, art, vocational, in every setting, all of this is done. And then on file IJ, instructional materials, actually, there's nothing particularly being deleted, but the red is being added, and 1 and 2, actually, Mr. Wilson just brought up about the curricula encouraging respect for diversity and reviewing the instructional materials. So that, we couldn't have planned this better if we'd planned it. So we'll be voting next time. If there are any questions, feel free to bring them up.
Any questions, comments? Okay. 4-1. Next thing on the subcommittee would be the Superintendent Evaluation Committee.
Yes. Just an update for the Superintendent's Evaluation Subcommittee. The end of April break, the subcommittee will receive Dr. Carpenter's reflection on his goals for the year, and over May and June, we will also receive the progress reports on the school improvement plans. And Dr. Carpenter will report out on the strategic plan as well. And the plan is to have the subcommittee to meet before the next school committee meeting, which I believe is April 26th.
28th.
25th.
School committee meeting? 25th.
Is it 25th?
25th.
Okay.
Oh, 14, I was adding 17.
So we'll be scheduling, our subcommittee will be
17 days in
scheduling
my
before
row.
April 25th to have another update.
Will this be the whole subcommittee, or just the two of you?
This is just the, the super evaluation subcommittee.
Okay, so it would be the four of us, that are- however many we are.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And superintendent's report?
Let's see, three things. First, I went and Terry joined me for the annual Harwich voter information session that was videotaped, where the town manager, chair of the selectmen, Bob Sanborn, the superintendent of Cape Tech, and Lee Culver, one of his school committee members, Jack Brown, one of the members of the Harwich Finance Committee, all were sort of sharing a sort of annual state of Harwich. I think it was very much I think really a good, positive, upbeat conversation all in all. I gave a report to, or at least my report is summarized on the my FY20 budget message that's on our website. I know that in Chatham, they go publish my budget message in their warrant. In Harwich, apparently my budget message wasn't so well received last year, but I'll at least pump it out to all families as we head into town meeting. But but it's been nice to at least know that we've got support for our budget from the from the boards in both towns. And what I tried to focus on is it was in many ways is a challenging budget year, where there were some factors that that caused us to have costs that were sort of unexpected, being this increase in out-of-district expenses and a shift towards Harwich, a dramatic shift towards Harwich in the minimum required contribution. And just sort of talked about some things that we did on our end to try to mitigate how much the assessment would go up in Harwich. And at the end of the day, it's a quite reasonable budget. It's a budget that supports moving forward the strategic plan, but it also allows us to maintain the class sizes and the supportive class sizes that we've had in the past, but also to maintain the programs across the board that we've had. So the second thing I just wanted to bring up is, Jim, can you flip to the other slide? So coming to inboxes, in email inboxes near you, we have the Monomoy Regional Schools Family and Community Needs Survey. Joe, for your purposes, this is connected to strategic plan objective number 3, closing the achievement gap, specifically initiative 3 within that, to work with community partners to expand early learning within our towns. Under that 3B, to explore partnering with community organizations to use available spaces within our elementary schools with a focus on expanding preschool experiences specifically for families for whom preschool may not have been otherwise accessible, with also an exploration of full-day, full-year possibilities. So we will be sending this out to all of our Monomoy families, and then trying to pump it out to all of our soon-to-be Monomoy families over the next 5 years, but families that aren't yet with us. It has sections, 4 sections. There's a section for if you have infants and toddlers, what sort of supports might you need to see more of within our towns, and how might we as a school district be able to support you in that. There's a section for preschoolers. Within that, there's a section for elementary age children, and at elementary age, it looks at what sort of supports before school, after school, and in the summertime might you need. And then for middle schoolers, the same thing. It's what sort of supports before school, after school, and in the summertime might you need, along with at the elementary and middle school level, questions on the supports that you currently have. How are we doing, and what can we do better with those supports? So so ideally, this is going to give us some feedback on what families need or could need more of, and how we're doing with the supports that are already in place. But again, with the with the focus towards being able to take some of this information to community partners and say, here's what we're hearing. Here we have spaces within our 2 elementary schools. Might we be able to use them to further our mission in getting more early education for our families and children in town. And then third, I want to report out that we have reached a agreement with our Unit C, which is our cafeteria workers. So yesterday we came to a successful agreement with them. I would like to see if we could potentially pull together a school committee executive session for the Monday when we return, which is the 22nd. The reason I would suggest this is if we can get a quorum together for an executive session, we could, as a group, have you hear what that resolution that we reached last night is, and ideally vote to accept it. If we vote to accept it, it then positions us to start retro paying people by the payroll that happens that Thursday. But if we wait for Thursday's school committee meeting, then we're not retro paying people who have waited a long time, because the Unit C is the last group until the first payroll in May. And at this point, I'd like to go and get folks their retro pay, and it's been challenging. That I know that they've gone through almost an entire school year, without being made whole. And I think I'd like to try to accelerate that process if we can.
I really like that idea. I'm thrilled that we are finally done, it sounds like, with all the negotiations.
Then we move on to the custodians, but they still have an active contract.
So I would love to see us do that Monday morning and go right into the superintendent's evaluation from that and get them all done.
8 a.m.?
8 a.m.,
That, I can't do that.
I can't do that.
9 a.m.
I can't do that.
I can do after 4:30.
I don't think
I'm not dressed at that time of the morning.
I don't think I can do after 4:30.
I'm being honest.
Okay, I could do 7 o'clock at night then, but I'm booked in the afternoon. And then,
How long's the, I can do like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
no, I can't.
I can do 1 or after 4:30.
Can we do 7?
7 p.m.?
7 p.m.?
For which one?
Terry?
Oh, I'm good at 7 p.m.
Of course, that puts me to the opposite. I'm in my pajamas. Monday the 22nd.
Yeah.
He's back in his pajamas.
No, that'd be me. I'm in my pajamas at that time.
So 7 o'clock executive session?
7
7
p.m.
On the 22nd.
What if we
And
do earlier, do the super eval starting at 6 o'clock?
I can't. I'm part of that.
It need not be a very long meeting, so we could do it immediately following.
Yeah. 7 to 8, get it all done.
Let's worry about the executive session part, and since that impacts all of us and the subcommittee.
7 o'clock, Monday, April 22nd, done.
Location, where would we need?
Why don't we,
High school
we'll
conference
plan
room?
on booking the high school conference room.
It's further for me to drive.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I went to middle school, it's great.
Middle school works well for me.
But again, as I said, I would like to see if we can just move things forward. And I want to
I
be
agree.
sensitive to this group.
I agree.
And then just one last thing. I just wanted to just thank Mark. I thought you did a great job with your presentation, and it's, while he's talking about math and English and ELA, and it's that's just still a subset of what Mark tackles in any given week. I had a great conversation with Mark and I in the World Language Department here at the high school, talking with them, because understandably, as the year has progressed, I think they've sort of wondered, sort of what's our commitment to world languages, and had a great conversation about our commitment, to maintain the 4 languages, but also, it was a conversation with them. How do we promote those more kids getting into those languages in 8th grade? I think one of the eye openers as we went through the whole conversation on world languages is only having 50% of our 8th graders choosing to take a world language, and that was part of the conversation with the group is how do we go and work on both the language department getting more kids excited about it, and how do we work in terms of preparing students for it, and also just sort of the adult community that's involved in guiding students to what are the important classes. How do we put that as one of the 5 key things that you're signing up for each year? Along with your English, math, science, social studies, and world language. And again, and Mark mentioned we were in wellness classrooms a few days before that. So it's been nice really to see Mark jump in here this year and make great headway.
Going back to the survey, I really love that you spoke about that we would try to find out what the needs are of the community, but also what they already have, because how I see it, and I think you see it also, is that we don't want to supplant any of the private industry or private daycare, but there seems to be some need beyond that, and what that is needs to be addressed.
Yeah, so there's specific questions about, is the infant toddler care that we have, is it adequate for you? And if it's not, what's getting in the way? Is it time of day? So we kind of try to tease out, what are some of the barriers there, and in infant toddler care and also in preschool, ask is full day, something along the lines of a 7:30 a.m. to a 5:30 p.m. sort of a full day, and a school year. A full year. Something that may be closed during the major holidays, but not during school vacation weeks or not during a school summer vacation, but truly being open year-round. Would something like that be something that would better support families?
Are we trying to suppose that a family's been used to having a 8 to 5 or something like that, or 8 to 4, but it might be nice for them to have an extra hour. Is it something that we would want to supplant or try to help add to?
So are you saying, would we want to add that extra hour?
Well, that wasn't really a good example. I just couldn't come up with a good example. Yeah, I'm just trying to say, we had this whole fiasco about the buses and about, were we trying to do away with local business? And that was not the intention whatsoever. And so with this, I just want to be clear from the start that my understanding is that our interest is to make sure parents have adequate child care for their children, not to encourage them to come over to something else we have if we could provide year-round, but they're very happy with what they have during the school year, but what they really need is something for summer.
Yeah, so I think short answer would be, we have no intention of supplanting or, pushing out of business a daycare in either town, but looking at what the needs are that families have that aren't being met, and how can we use space that we have available in our own schools to meet those needs. But again, trying to tie it back to a focus on the strategic plan, looking in the second question in the survey asks, are there, is your family receiving any sorts of support, be it a rent subsidy, is it, free and reduced lunch, is it some other aid that you're receiving, is there a financial need there? Because we can then look at, we can call out responses, okay, the families with financial need, how are their either infant, toddler, preschool, elementary or middle school needs being met, and where are the holes there, and then start to, get creative about how we can hopefully use some of our resources or support the towns in using resources to, to help these families.
Yeah, thank you.
Terry?
Just to go back as a segue to Scott's comment connected to the Spanish experience in the elementary. A kind of a lighthearted and true story. We have a daughter-in-law, because of a family need, had to go back to Argentina for 10 or 12 days, and for her whole life she's very, very fluent in Spanish. But living here all her life, she very seldom has an opportunity to use it. So upon her arrival back home last Monday, before going to work, she took their rescue dog Hank for a run. And she commented for the first 10 minutes she was speaking Spanish to Hank. And the poor dog was schizoidal about who he was with and what did this all mean. And it took her that number of minutes to finally realize that she slipped into Spanish so easily, but yet not being familiar enough with it, it was hard to let go. So their dog is getting treated in French. So.
All right.
It's all for me. It's all good.
And I think now on to the action items. We just have the hourly substitute rates.
And the sole source.
And the sole source aquifer.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to end or anything, no. Yeah, let's take a vote for the sole source aquifer writers retreat.
I move that we support the sole source aquifer writers retreat.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Now the hourly substitute rates.
Dawn, before, could I
Oh.
just clarify something on that, please? I just wanted to make, you guys are new business manager. I wanted to make sure that there's no intention at all to do away with the full day, the daily rates for the substitutes and the teaching assistants. But we have a handful, maybe even less than a handful of people that work 4, 5, and 6 hours a day that don't fit into a half day or a whole day. So when those people are out, it becomes a challenge on what we pay the substitute because we don't have an hourly rate. We have the hourly rate for the custodians, but not an hourly rate for those kind of unique positions, like I said, about a handful. The time is not, we recently went through and did a review of the sub rates, and we were right in line with the sub rates. We had adjusted the substitute nurse rates, if you recall, I think last fall, maybe. So it's just really to have a rate to pay some exceptions. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Any other comments of Nancy?
I would like to make a motion to approve the recommended hourly substitute rates for substitute teachers at $12.14 per hour, substitute instructional assistant, cafeteria, van drivers, and van monitors at $12 an hour, and the substitute nurse at $21.43 per hour.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, I will take a Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
I could do that one too, if I could do that other one.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Dare oppose that.
Not bad.